Hello friends, and welcome back to today's video. I am very much enjoying my new desk space, so if you haven't seen me set up my new desk space, do check out the video before this. And I knew I wanted to set up my new space before I started making more of a mess of things. And one of the first things I am unboxing is this Lamy Safari Field Green pen. So this is my first Lamy Safari. I do not own any Lamys before this, and I've never even felt or held a Lamy in my hand before. Lamys are one of the most intro level fountain pens and affordable ones that you could find easily at a lot of stationery shops. I feel like if there was a fountain pen at a stationery store, but they're not a fountain pen forward shop, you could still find either a Lamy Safari or a Kaweco Sport. Those are usually the two fountain pens that I see at stationery stores that are trying to get into fountain pens. But honestly, I skipped through the entire list of affordable fountain pens and I went straight into Japanese gold nib pens. It's really funny that now that I'm getting into medium nibs, I am going back into more affordable pens. Anyways, getting to the actual pen of this video, it is the Lamy Safari Field Green pen. So the Field Green color is supposedly a pen only available in Japan, South Korea, Thailand, and Taiwan, and in limited quantities. There is the steel nib version and the gold nib version. So I guess Japan offered a 14 karat gold nib option, but Lamy Safari nibs are very easy to remove and interchange, and so I decided to just opt for the regular version. And this design has a gold clip. A lot of the Lamy Safaris will have a clip that matches the pen body, or it is silver. So what really drew me to this pen in general is the gold clip, and plus it is in a green colorway. This is my first pen body of this kind of material where the plastic is very prominent that it's plastic and it's kind of matte. There is some texture to it, and honestly, I hear it a lot, and it is true that it kind of feels like a toy pen, and this is only coming from a place of being able to hold heavier, heftier fountain pens. And so going back to a Lamy Safari, it is kind of night and day. I was really surprised to find how much I enjoyed the triangular recessed grip of this fountain pen. I have heard from friends that they really dislike the grip, and I think that might have to play with how you hold your fountain pen. I think if you're a person whose fingers overlap, for example, your thumb might overlap over your index finger, it would be very hard to get used to this grip. Whereas I can have multiple grips. I have a grip where it really fits this triangular recessed grip section. You can kind of see it here now that I'm doing some writing samples, but I can also have a grip changing the angle and the degree where my thumb will overlap my index finger. Anyways, I am swatching whatever greens that I can find in my collection. I have a lot of green inked pens right now, and so spoiler alert, I actually don't end up inking this pen in this video, but I do find a really good match. I actually have this pen in two nibs. So in the very beginning I showed some clips, and it actually has a kanji nib. I was able to acquire this pen through a friend who was traveling in Japan at the time of the release, and I was lucky, and she was lucky, to be able to find it for me. And the only nib that was left was a kanji nib. I was actually very interested in a medium nib, but it's so easy to acquire new Lamy nibs, and it's actually harder to get a kanji nib. So I opted to buy the kanji nib. It is a little bit extra on top of the Lamy Safari price for this specific colorway, and I purchased a medium replacement nib on my own, and I'm doing the writing samples here with the kanji nib. So a kanji nib is essentially getting towards more of a Japanese fine, obviously better for writing in kanji. And the Lamy Safari, it is a Western pen, specifically a German pen, and the nibs are going to be a lot thicker than you'll find the Japanese nib counterpart. The kanji nib is a grind to get closer to a Japanese fine, because a Western fine is a lot thicker. And so I found this to be true doing the writing sample and testing it out myself, that the kanji is similar to a Japanese fine, and I really quite enjoyed it. I then changed to the medium nib for the second half of the samples and testing out which color was the best, and I actually really enjoyed the medium nib. It was quite a shocker to me, but also not a shocker, just because I really am leaning towards medium nibs right now. I'm even getting really curious about broad. I acquired my first italic. I tried my first music nib the other week, and so I'm really loving these wet flowing juicy ink nibs that get you a lot of line variation, that get you a lot of ink properties to be able to shine. And so I really favored the medium nib between these two, though I'm very happy to own the kanji nib so that I can switch back and forth. But let me finally talk about the ink samples that I have. So the very first one was Harrods Green Diamine Blue Black exclusive ink, and this is actually the best match to the pen body. Then I tried Wenshan Puchang Tea by Lennon Toolbar, and it was a little too muddy, a little too olive toned for this green. This is a true foresty green. It is very evergreen in color, and so I needed to find something closer to that. The next one that I tried was Peter Moss, which was Ferris Wheel Press. I would say this is a very good match as well. Not as close as the Harrods Green, but Harrods Green is a limited exclusive ink, and so based on the inks that are easier to obtain from what I sampled, I would say Peter Moss is definitely the next best bet. Then I tried Kobe Nagasawa ink in Chaska Green, and that was a little too yellow, getting back to a more muddy color, so that didn't work. Goldgrün by Rohrer and Klinger was also a little too yellow, more of a grass green, so while it was really pretty in this pen, not an exact match. And then the last two ink samples I tried were just way too yellow to really even consider being a match to this pen, and those were Kokeiro by Kyo no Oto and then Emotional Olive by Teranishi. But I don't have very many greens to begin with, so I thought, you know, why not try every single green and just see what kind of tone comes out and how they look compared to this pen. But by far the best closest match was Harrods Green, but again, that is an exclusive, so I would say Peter Moss is even a great option. And I did not ink this pen, so I don't actually have a Lamy converter. I completely forgot that it would even need a converter. For some reason in my head, I think because of all the sailors I'm used to buying, it usually comes with a converter, but I was surprised, one, by the minimal lack of packaging that comes from Lamy, but of course, you know, it comes with the price point of this pen. And then two, opening it up, I was shocked and I was like, oh yeah, it's only a cartridge. And so I emptied out the cartridge, but not without a casualty. I actually applied too much pressure and the ink came splattering out and it made a mess all over my sink and my white tank top. But I was able to save my white tank top, thankfully no ink stains. But I have just the cartridge, and so I need to figure out if I'm ever going to ink it. I kind of need it to be an ink that's going to stay for a really long time, because I am traumatized now cleaning out that cartridge. I really just need to go ahead and buy a Lamy converter. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you own a Lamy, started with a Lamy, if you eventually sold them. I am curious to know your story with Lamy Safari fountain pens. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.